Are you trying to figure out how to get your podcast noticed? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you 3 strategies in terms of getting your podcast noticed and ultimately getting you the attention you deserve. Stay tuned. Hey Changemaker, Jay Wong here. These simple strategies are going to put you on the right path to thinking about getting the right attention that you ultimately deserve. Because let's be honest, you put in all the time, all the energy to put a great show together. Now you just got to get the right listeners. So here are the 3 simple strategies. Strategy number 1 is launching with some oomph. Being able to launch and hit the top 200, new and noteworthy, top 100, it shouldn't be your number 1 priority, but it certainly helps whenever you're launching anything to get some recognition along the way. Now, this does a couple things. The first thing that it does is that it gives you the sense that you are building something with your community, because the way that you get your podcast to launch, and we can make a video later on this at a later point, but the way that you get your podcast to rank simply comes down to the amount of subscriptions that you're able to drive in the very beginning. Downloads plays a part. Also, the time of consumption plays a part in terms of how often they come back and binge listen to your show. But you want to really focus on those subscriptions right in the first 24 or 48 hours. That's really where you're going to get the most oomph. The reason you want to be able to do this is because you want to position your podcast in a relevant category. By the way, you could pick 3, okay? So you could pick 3 different categories that your podcast is recognized for, that it makes sense for your podcast to be ranked there. And what are you doing? You're positioning your podcast to an audience that doesn't know who you are, but because you're positioned there in the top 50, top 100, what's hot section, whatever it is, because you're positioned there, now you are being introduced to solve their problem. You're being introduced as the thought leader, as the authority that can talk on the topic that you're geeking out on, whether it's drones or whether it's farming, whether it's marketing, whether it's making videos, whatever it is, there is going to be a topic for you. And your job as the content creator, as the podcast host, your job is to find this group of people and for them to congregate and for them to geek out with you on what you're passionate about, right? And so that's why you want to launch with some oomph. You want to have a launch plan. You want to do Facebook groups, and you want to leverage your newsletter, your email list, everything that you have, your current audience, to be able to do that so that each and every single time you raise up in the rankings, you're launching, they're there to support you. They feel like they're a part of that journey with you, and you're being introduced to a new audience, right? So that's the easiest one. If you don't have a podcast already, this is the easiest one that you have to focus on. You have to nail the launch. You want to launch with momentum, just as if you were launching anything, whether it's a book, a new platform, what have you. You want to launch with oomph. Makes sense, right? So that is strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is interviewing some great guests. Now, I've had the fortunate opportunity of running the Inner Changemaker, and we've gotten the chance to interview millionaires, we've gotten a chance to interview a few billionaires, we've gotten a chance to interview some New York bestsellers, and it's not by mistake that these people are on my podcast. The reason I wanted these people on my podcast was, 1, I wanted to be able to give thanks, and I wanted to give them my platform, lend them some space on my platform for them to promote their message, for them to talk about their legacy, for them to talk about their books, their product launches, whatever it is that they wanted to share, and we co-created a piece of content. Now, the secondary reason I had them on is because they already have an audience. Okay, this is really, really important. There are some really talented thought leaders and influencers, people that have put up years and they've poured their heart and their soul into their work. Your job is not to be able to compete with that. Your job is to be able to find those people and to highlight them, especially in an interview format show. You want to be able to highlight them because they already have the audience, okay? And if you get them to share it, which we'll talk about in a second, if you get them to share it, now they're sharing you to that warmer audience, right? And usually half the time they don't even share the episode. That's okay. We want them to share it, but But if they don't share it, there's already that audience that loves them so much that no matter what they do, they're gonna find that interview anyways. So you're gonna get a little bit, you get to essentially ride their coattails, right? You get a little bit of their influence. You get a little bit of their connections. You get to pick off a few of their listeners, a few of their followers, a few of their community members, because you guys have similar messages. That's why you collaborated on a podcast, right? You guys have similar values, hopefully. If it was a good piece of content, that is what's gonna make them want to share it so that you get to ride the coattails a little bit. You get to have a little bit of followers follow you. And this has happened countless amount of times. I remember when I interviewed Lisa Nichols. Lisa Nichols has this amazing community, people that just love Lisa Nichols. And so when they discovered our interview together, they would discover this channel. They would discover my podcast. They would discover my courses. They would work with me and they said, hey, and then we would ask them, hey, where'd you hear about us? Like, how'd you find us? Like, how'd you hear about me? They said, we heard you from the interview with Lisa Nichols, right? So Lisa, if you're watching this, thank you so much. You want to be able to leverage the platform to grow your audience. That's the whole idea, right? We talked about this in earlier videos and in future videos, I'm sure we'll talk about it. But the whole idea of you having a podcast is for you to drive conversions. And the only way conversions work for you is whether people build a relationship with you, whether they trust you, right? And they might, when we say conversion, they might buy from you at a later point. They might be in your community. They might be on your email list. Heck, most of these people might never buy from you, and that's okay because we're in the business of creating content, of changing people's lives, of making a difference for people, right? That's why you want to leverage the podcast platform. Does that make sense for all of you? So that's strategy number 2, getting the right guests on. And strategy number 3 is actually getting your guests to share. Now, I'm gonna share something that we really only share for our private clients and my students in Podcast Your Brand, but it's simply this. You wanna do the one thing when the interview is done. So what is the one thing, all right? You want to pick apart the interview. So let's say we just finished the interview. I interviewed you. I was like, man, we just had this amazing interview. That's so awesome. You want to say, hey, person, great interview. I really love that you said this one thing. Could be a story, could be a quote. I like that one thing. I can't wait for me to share the episode with you so that we can share that one thing, that story with the world. I can't wait to share that one thing with my audience. Can't wait to share that one thing with your audience. So depending on how you frame it, you want to get them to micro commit to sharing the one thing, right? And this is how we essentially get all of our guests to share a clip, a quote, something, right? Because if you ask them to share your whole podcast, if you ask them to share a whole blog piece, if you ask them to share a 50-minute interview, if that's what you're doing, sometimes that's a lot, right? And especially for you thought leaders and influencers that are watching this, you know that you don't want to come across as self-promoting too much, right? So it's about leveraging that one thing, pick one thing that they said and say, hey, I would love for you to be able to share that with your audience. I think that story is gonna make a massive difference. I know that quote will make a massive difference, right? And so now they're committed. Once they say yes, they're like, okay, I'm committed. I'm sharing that quote. So then when you get them all the links, when you give them all the things to be able to share the episode, now they have the one thing. They go, oh yeah, I'm micro committed. And don't be offended if they don't share it. Heck, a lot of times people are busy, right? And it's all good that they don't actually get there. But if you apply this one thing, I guarantee you, the way that your guests share your episodes, it's gonna make a massive difference. And we all know from strategy number 2 that the more that they share, the more they introduce you to a warmer audience. So those are the 3 different strategies. That is it for this video. If you guys are looking to launch a podcast, down below I've actually included what I call my podcast creation roadmap. And in that roadmap, it outlines for you the 8 stages of how to be able to launch your own podcast, and it sequences it step by step. So if you're getting overwhelmed by the whole process, if you want to figure out how to be able to launch and do all these sorts of things with your podcast, download that roadmap, and we have other trainings right after the roadmap where you'll get access to. Now, if you got any value out of this, we'd love for you to be able to like that video. If you love the video, smash that subscribe button, because I'm looking to come at you every single week with new content, to help you be able to not just launch a great top 100 podcast, but ultimately be able to leverage it to build your brand, to build your authority. If you have any questions, please list them down below. Once this video goes live, I'm gonna be down there hanging out, answering some of your questions in the comment section. I appreciate each and every single one of you, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. I'll talk to you soon.